Welcome back. Let's take just a few moments to talk about the idea of chemical reactions. We're going to be talking about interactions that occur between molecules, and this is something that we're just going to be taking a look at in a very overview sense. We're not going to try to get into a lot of detail about different types of chemical reactions. In general, though, think about it this way. We already talked about how atoms want to attain stability, and we also talked about the idea that electrons like to be at low energy levels. Well, that means that there's going to be a number of circumstances in which molecules and the atoms of those molecules interact with each other in ways so that they can become more stable or move to a more stable condition, or their electrons can move to a lower energy level. And so we're going to see a number of examples of interactions between molecules that we're going to refer to as chemical reactions. So let's take a look at some basic types of chemical reactions. First of all, we can break them down into three basic types, and you can see if you've had a chemistry class, or when you have a chemistry class, you will see that this is a very, very simplified discussion of the idea of a chemical reaction. That's all we want for right now. We're not trying to get into the details of all of the subtypes of these different types of chemical reactions. First of all, we might have a chemical reaction that we could classify as a synthesis reaction. Notice that in this particular reaction, we're taking substances and we're putting them together to make something. So you could think of these as being a type of building reaction. You could think of them as reactions in which some types of molecules are being attached to each other to make something. Now, on the other side of that, we might have a decomposition reaction. In this type of reaction, we're taking something apart. We're taking some kind of substance, and the pieces of it are being separated. We're pulling things apart. Decomposition reaction are going to be ones that we'll see repeatedly as we talk about some of the chapters we're going to deal with. And then finally, in a very general sense, we could talk about reactions that are exchange reactions. Here's when we have two substances interacting with each other, and the result of that is that they exchange pieces. They rearrange their components, and the products are portions of the different things that were interacting to begin with to start the chemical reaction. So just think of these as three very basic categories, just so that you can have a little bit of terminology to relate to some of these chemical reactions. Now, as you look in the book at examples of chemical reactions, then please think about how you would classify them. What kind of reaction of these three basic types would you put them in? What category would you place them in? And remember, when you get a chance to have a class in chemistry, you're going to expand greatly on these types of chemical reactions and talk about a variety of different kinds of subgroups of these three basic types. Well, the chemical reaction is something in which there's going to be bonds that are being broken and bonds that are being made. We're going to be rearranging the bonding of the atoms in the molecule. And remember, those covalent bonds that we talked about that are holding these molecules together are pairs of shared electrons. So when we talk about chemical reactions and we talk about molecules going through a change in composition or a rearrangement of their bonds, what we're really talking about is redistributing the electrons that are present. Some pairs that were being shared before aren't being shared any longer, right? So we're breaking some chemical bonds. New bond sharing relationships, new electron sharing relationships are being created. The two key terms that are used to describe the components of a chemical reaction are the reactants, that's the material we start with, and then the products, the materials that we end up with. So you'll see that terminology used, reactant and product. Here's one example. We might have these reactants where we have some hydrogen gas molecules, 2H2. By the way, notice that that 2 in front of the H2 is saying that we have two molecules of H2, two hydrogen gas molecules. And notice that it's going to be interacting with an oxygen molecule, O2. Notice also there that that oxygen molecule has a double covalent bond. Remember what that meant? 4 shared electrons, 2 pairs of shared electrons. An arrow is used to represent the event of the reaction itself, and you could think of that arrow as representing the word yields or makes or results in or produces. You can see it could mean a number of things, but commonly you'll see the term yield used for that arrow. And you can see what we've made at the end. We've made a product. In this case, we've made 2 water molecules. Once again, notice that the large 2 in front of the H2O means that there's 2 of those H2O molecules present. So we might think of this as saying that hydrogen gas reacts with oxygen gas and yields water. So you can see that this is describing an interaction, and clearly you can see also that the covalent bonds involved have been rearranged. Bonds have been broken, new bonds have been made. So, again, very quick overview of this idea of chemical reactions. We said that they're primarily associated with the stability of atoms and the arrangement and distribution of the electrons that those atoms have. What happens is chemical bonds, right, pairs of shared electrons, are going to be rearranged during the chemical reaction. Well, that means that we're going to be breaking some bonds and we're going to be building other bonds as we do this rearrangement of electrons. The reactions themselves, we said, could be thought of as coming in 3 basic types. Remember what those were? Synthesis, decomposition, exchange reactions. And we said that the basic terminology used to describe the components of a reaction are the reactants, the starting point, and then our products, the end point of the chemical reaction. Now you'll see these terms used over and over again in future chapters, and you just want to have this general sense for how to apply these terms correctly. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.